I went to the Hartford Regionals, a Pokemon tournament, because I'm trying to qualify for the Pokemon World Championship. The Pokemon World Championship 2023 takes place in Yokohama, Japan later this year. But to get there, you first have to qualify for the tournament by getting a total of 300 championship points by traveling the country or even the globe competing in events. Think of the 300 championship points as the 8 gym badges you need, and Japan as Victory Road. Right now I'm headed to Hartford, Connecticut in search of more points. This is my story of my road to Japan. Since my last tournament, there's been a lot of changes. For one, the format has shifted into Regulation C, which now allows the usage of Ruin Pokemon. The Ruin Pokemon are interesting in doubles because their abilities affect all other Pokemon on the field. Xian Pao is a fast physical attacker which enables partner Pokemon like Terra Normal Extreme Speed Dragonite. Shi Yu is a strong special attacker that pairs well with existing threats like Fluttermane. Ting Lu is a tank that shuts down most Pokemon, and Wo Qian always tries its best. Also, since my last event, there's been tournaments in Fort Wayne, Indiana, London, England, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Portland, Oregon, and Malmo, Sweden, where the meta has developed even further. There were also online tournaments called the Global Challenge, where I got 30 championship points myself, bringing my total from 120 to 150. Unfortunately, there are still only a few events left, and I have to get my last 150 before the deadline. For me, Hartford is a very important tournament. I couldn't make it to a lot of the previous tournaments, and there's only a few left and I have to make it count. But this time I've changed my team. Now I'm using Jumpluff Sun. I took the team that won the last event in Portland. Sun has quickly become one of the top archetypes in the format, replacing Palance. The ideas are very simple. Get the most powerful Pokemon in the format, Paradox Pokemon, and make them even stronger. Add in Pokemon like Chi Yu and you can dump ridiculous amounts of damage on your opponent. Broadly, the two types of Sun are Torkoal Sun and Murkrow Sun. Its Drought ability sets up the Sun automatically and then you go to work from there. Murkrow, on the other hand, has more flexibility. It doesn't set up the Sun automatically, but it can either use Prankster Tailwind or Prankster Sunny Day first, depending on the situation. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. The season's getting over and I'm looking for points. More specifically, I'm looking for consistent points. Let me use a team that I know is good and let me back myself to outplay. There are some disadvantages in using a known team, namely that people are ready for it and likely would have some practice against it, but that was a trade-off I was okay with making. Sun has so much raw power that there's always going to be a lot of room to outplay the opponent. The tournament starts with 9 rounds of Swiss where players with a record of 7-2 or above qualify for a day 2 and move on further from there. I started the day in round 1 versus a pretty bulky team with tanks like Iron Hand. But while their team was strong and bulky, it was also slow. And that's where I was able to detonate the sheer power of Fluttermane and Great Tusk, the two heavy hitters on the team. Fluttermane is one of the strongest and fastest Pokemon in the format, and with a Choice Specs and Terra Fairy, it's able to mow down a lot of the competition. Add in a special attack Photosynthesis boost from Sun, and it's almost impossible to beat. Similarly, Choice Scarf Great Tusk with an attack Proto boost adds power and speed and combos well with Fluttermane. In Game 1, I was able to use Fluttermane alongside Torkoal, with Torkoal using Helping Hand. Terra Fairy, Choice Specs, Proto boosted, Helping Hand boosted Fluttermane's Dazzling Gleam, was able to get 2 KOs every turn and my opponent couldn't stop it. His team didn't have the speed to match my Fluttermane, and Helping Hand meant that it didn't have the defense either. In Game 2, I was able to use one of the techs on Torkoal, Overheat Eject Pack. Great Tusk and Fluttermane being on the field at the same time is great, but how does that actually happen? With Eject Pack, Torkoal can fire off an attack and then act as a pivot to bring in the new Pokemon. My opponent adjusted well after Game 1 to stop Fluttermane, but he couldn't handle the combo attacks of Game 2, and I started off the day 1-0. A pretty much perfect illustration of how deadly Sun can be at its peak. In round 2, I was playing a Maushold Annihilate Goldengo. Terra Water Goldengo is tricky. It can do large amounts of damage to Fluttermane and Great Tusk with Make It Rain. Meanwhile, its partner Maushold has Friend Guard to reduce damage and Follow Me to take attacks off of it. Luckily, I have an Assault Vest Kingambit in the back whose job is to take on special attackers like Goldengo. Unluckily, he also has an Annihilate which destroys Kingambit. Also, he has an Iron Bundle with Speed, Booster Energy, and Icy Wind. My Pokemon are fast, but they're not Booster Bundle fast. If Booster Bundle can Icy Wind my Pokemon like Fluttermane and Great Tusk, then all of a sudden Goldengo can outspeed and knock them out. But to beat Booster Bundle, I have another Pokemon, Jumpluff. In the Sun, Chlorophyll Jumpluff outspeeds even the legendary Booster Bundle and is one of the fastest Pokemon in the format, period. It can also use Tailwind and Sleep Powder to help its teammates. This team has 2 modes, fast and faster, and Jumpluff is used versus fast playstyles like Tailwind or Booster Bundle strategy. Jumpluff isn't a great statistical Pokemon, but it does one thing well, and that is speed and utility with moves like Encore, Sleep Powder, and Tailwind. Together, this combines to create an intricate web of interaction. Kingambit beats Gholdengo but not Annihilate. Gholdengo beats Fluttermane but not Kingambit. Most battles aren't as simple as what happened in round 1, and navigating these interactions and positions are how you win games. It took 3 games of back and forth, but unfortunately I wasn't able to win. In hindsight, I think I had a good matchup, but I struggled with positioning my Jumpluff and Kingambit in the right positions to deal with Iron Bundle. Terra Water Annihilate would bulk up and attack, and Iron Bundle would keep my Pokemon slow with Icy Wind. Even if I had Defiant Kingambit to take on Icy Wind, it would still die to Annihilate with Drain Punch, and I wasn't able to outposition that. Ultimately, it was close, but I lost a positioning war and took the loss to go 1-1. In round 3, I fought a Qianpao Dragonite team with other Pokemon like Chi-Yu. While it was a really powerful team, there were many Pokemon weak to Rock, and I went to a strategy built around Great Tusk's Rock Slide. Rock Slide is a nuisance of a thread move. It has about a 47% chance to flinch at least one Pokemon, and it's relatively strong coming off of a Great Tusk. I was able to get consistent spread damage off with Rock Slide and then use friends like Fluttermane to finish the job. It was a relatively comfortable win, and I moved up to 2-1. In round 4, I fought another balanced team with Pokemon like Amoonguss and Intimidate Gyarados for defense, and Chi-Yu, Fluttermane, and Booster Bundle for offense. Booster Bundle causes problems for my core, so I need to bring Pokemon like Jumpluff or Kingambit. Amoonguss too makes stuff tricky because it's bulky enough to live one hit and use Spore. Usually the strategies are to bait it to terrestrialize from the threat of Overheat Torkoal and then overpower it later with Pokemon like Moonblast Fluttermane. This is easier said than done though. It came all the way down to game 3 where I had a low health Torkoal and a Rock Slide locked Great Tusk versus Chi-Yu. He had done well to stall out my Sun turns and I didn't have an attack boost anymore. I used Helping Hand to boost up Great Tusk, but it didn't get the KO or flinch and I lost the series. That put me at 2-2, the dreaded X and 2 tables. The X and 2 tables are the graveyard of dreams because half the people there get eliminated every round. You need to go 7-2 to make it to day 2, and the day barely started and I was already at the end of the rope. At this point, I was pretty frustrated. The season's almost over and I still haven't secured my ticket to Japan yet. I can't afford to leave Hartford without any points at all. Fortunately, going to X and 2 early means that you're playing other X and 2 players and they are not necessarily the strongest players around. Unfortunately for me, that didn't happen. Sometimes the numbers don't divide evenly and there could be an odd number of players at a record, and that happened at Hartford. I happened to get the up pair, which means that I was playing someone who is 3-1, not a fellow 2-2 bottom dweller. On top of that, I wasn't playing just any 3-1er, I was playing Steven Mia, someone so accomplished that he has his own Pedia page about him. He would end up finishing 12th out of 750 in the entire tour, and this was really my make or break moment. I was 2-2 in a situation where I needed points, and I was playing a really good player. It's also the first time I use someone who I haven't introduced yet, Qianpao. It's mainly there to shore up tricky matchups. Its Ice Spinner move is good versus Psychic Terrain teams, and Taunt helps versus Terra Water Amoonguss if I feel that I can't overpower it. In this situation, I liked it because of the matchup into its Glimmora. Great Tusk plus Qianpao is my best way to take on a Pokemon that has good matchups versus a majority of my team. Glimmora's Terra Grass stops Great Tusk, but Qianpao's Ice Spinner lets me pin down the Pokemon. Having this option lets me deter the use of Glimmora, which is otherwise good versus the rest of my team. As a whole, his team was tricky for mine. He had Tyranitar to remove the Sun, Terra Water Gholdengo, and Booster Iron Bundle to cause issues. It was a back and forth series and I didn't use Qianpao in every game, but I was finally able to come out on top after 3 games. I would lead Tusk and Qianpao if I was expecting Glimmora, and my standard Sun stuff if I wasn't. Torkoal as a jetpack was crucial in keeping momentum up versus Tyranitar, who wants to shut down Sun as much as possible. It was a big win and I was now 3-2 with a long road ahead of me. In round 5 I played another Sun team, but he didn't have a jetpack Torkoal on his team like me, and he had Scarf Chi-Yu and Banded Great Tusk instead of Jumpluff. Scarf Chi-Yu is terrifying in the Sun, but his team was weak to speed. We both had strong, powerful Pokemon, but my Jumpluff with Tailwind is a huge enabler. With Torkoal being able to overheat and switch, and Jumpluff providing speed support, I was able to easily get in my powerful attackers. Then, once I was in, I was able to outspeed and get the knockouts. 4-2. Next, I played a standard Palance team. At one point in the season, Palance was everywhere. The Arcanine Palafin Amoonguss core was dominating games and was on a majority of teams. But eventually it fell out of favor because people kept raising the damage scale higher and higher. Palafin's biggest flaw is that it has to start a game and then spend one turn switching out. When switching out, your incoming Pokemon is defenseless and there's the opportunity cost of not attacking yourself. It's an interesting trade-off, and for a while it was worth it. But as higher power strategies started picking up, it started becoming less effective. The relative fall of Palance could be a video in and of itself, but the short version of it is that you don't have time to switch out when there's boosted Chi-Yus or Fluttermanes or Great Tusks trying to blow you up. It's not a bad strategy, but it's definitely fallen in favor. His Arcanine Amoonguss actually causes an annoying problem for me. Ordinarily, Eject Pack on Torkoal is great because it lets me attack and then pivot in one of my powerhouse Pokemon. But an Arcanine can switch in and use its Intimidate ability. Involuntarily, it forces me to switch out my Torkoal. This is bad when there's also an Amoonguss, because instead of Amoonguss dying to an overheat, it's going to be able to spore the Torkoal fly. To solve this, I picked up a technique from the creator of the team, and it's what I call their rotation technique. You lead Torkoal and Jumpluff versus Amoonguss and a filler Pokemon, and it's clear their intention is to go Arcanine and Spore. What you do is you swap in Kingambit for Jumpluff. Then when Arcanine comes in, it gives Kingambit a Defiant boost. So far so good. But then, because Jumpluff is now on the bench, it's free to come right back into the Torkoal slot and absorb the Spore. The end result is a Kingambit at +1 attack, ready to Terra Fire and blow something up. It's a cute tactic to rotate Jumpluff into the game, and I won game 1 using it. Then I was able to finish off the series moving up to 5-2. In round 8, I played a team with some unconventional choices like Iron Moth and Bronzong. He also had a Tyranitar to remove my son, but truthfully it's not a big threat. Because Eject Pack Torkoal moves in and out of a game smoothly, I can position myself well enough around sand. He has a Dragon Dance Gyarados, but Jumpluff's Encore stops Gyarados from ever being a threat, and it's just about positioning to outdamage the opponent. I was scared of Trick Room Bronzong because my 2 game modes are fast and faster, and Trick Room could remove that. I made sure to keep Jumpluff on the field as much as possible so I could Sleep Powder Bronzong and stop it from moving. In the end though, he never did bring Bronzong, and Great Tusk and Fluttermane were able to power through and get the win. Finally, I was 6-2. After a disaster of a start, I finally clawed my way back to 1 win away from qualifying. My final test was versus a Klefki Volcarona team. Reflect and Light Screen slow down my attack and give chances for setup sweepers like Volcarona to Quiver Dance for a win. My Jumpluff has Encore and can shut those sweepers down, but it's not as easy as it sounds. For example, my opponent had Life Orb Excalibur and could knock out Jumpluff while it was trying to Encore something. Meanwhile, the thing I'm Encoring can protect while that's happening. But there's one last secret weapon I haven't told you about, and it's my Torkoal, which has the unholy move Fissure. I am not normally a Satan worshipper, but it makes sense on the team. Torkoal is really weak after an overheat, and there are situations where you don't need a helping hand. It's not too often, but in those contexts you want a useful third move. You have Yawn, or Clear Smog, or Solar Beam, or Fissure. Fissure is a bullshit move and it shouldn't be an option, but it is, and it's the best option on this particular team, so I'll use it. And in this particular matchup, it was a move worth using because it cuts through the defense boosting of Reflect and Light Screen. Prior to this series, I was 0 for 4 on Fissures in the day, mainly just as a Hail Mary match robber in losing situations. But here, Fissure was a way I could help beat Volcarona. Terra Water Volcarona with Quiver Dance can beat me, especially if Volcarona Flame Body burns my Great Tusk with Headlong Rush, which did actually happen. His Pollen Puff Wo-Chien can heal more damage than I can output. When that happens, I can't really stop Volcarona and I have to Fissure. Volcarona does little damage to Torkoal, but wins in the long run without a Fissure. I went 1 for 2 from Fissures in games 1 and 2, and it was all gonna come down to game 3. Game 3's endgame reached a Torkoal versus a Terra Water Volcarona. The way it worked out is that I would have 4 Fissures before Volcarona would beat me. My tournament all came down to Fissure. I had to hit 1 Fissure out of 4, roughly a 76% chance. My first one, a whiff. My second one, that missed 2. My third one, no luck. 1 left. From the trenches of 2 and 2 to seeing the light of day at 6 and 2, it all came down to 1 last Fissure, a 30% chance to hit. And on the very last Fissure, I hit the shot and knocked out Volcarona. It was something out of an anime, and I was able to qualify on the very last play, and I made it to 7-2, ready for day 2. Day 2 is 5 rounds of Swiss with all the other 7-2 or better players. After these 5 rounds, the top 8 make it to a knockout bracket. The way the numbers break down is that going 12-2 guarantees you make it, and going 11-3 means you have a chance of making it depending on your opponent's win rate. Winning games in day 2 is much harder than day 1 because all your opponents are going to be good. I opened up day 2 with a loss to a Dondozo Tatsugiri team, and unfortunately my chance of making top 8 was basically over with that. I could make a run from 7-3 to 11-3, but even if I did, my opponent's win rate, the stat used to tiebreak, would inherently be low because I lost my first round and would be playing more losers than other people at 11-3. I picked up a win against a Psychic Terrain Trick Room team, and then another win versus a Dozo no Giri team to move up to 9-3. Dondozo without Tatsugiri is an interesting idea that picked up some steam earlier in the season with the idea of Ting Lu and Dondozo combining to wall a lot of different Pokemon. At 9-3, I likely couldn't make the top 8, but I could at least play for positioning and squeeze out some more points for a higher finish. In the penultimate round, I faced a Talonflame Tailwind team, and Tailwind is the main playstyle that can expose Sun. In a battle of offense, whoever moves first wins the game. Offense is built around speed, and offense is predicated on the notion that your poor defenses are okay if you outspeed and knock out your opponent first. Talonflame has Gale Wings Tailwind, which means that it's guaranteed to get up a Tailwind. My Jumpluff is EV'd to outspeed certain variants of Modest Fluttermane, but not all variants. His Fluttermane and Tailwind was faster and stronger than all my Pokemon, and the game was going to be about using King Gambit to stop the Fluttermane while not getting myself into too much trouble versus his Garchomp. If I bring King Gambit into Fluttermane but he actually brings Garchomp, I end up in a really difficult position. Unfortunately, I couldn't get it done and I lost the game to drop to 9-4. Then I finished with a loss to a balanced team and ended up at 9-5, making the top 64. I'm happy with how I fought back from 2-2 to 7-2, but I'm not happy with my day 2 performance. It feels like I'm making day 2 consistently enough and I'm good enough to do that, but I'm not able to make it to the next tier of play. There's still a lot to learn. In any case, I got 50 points for making day 2, bringing my total to 200 out of 300. I have 2 events left and 100 points left to qualify for Japan.